Hey everybody, welcome back. Bear with me a little bit this week because I'm having to use this microphone as a handheld microphone because last week the audio was like a whole ordeal because I just used the on-camera audio and my attempt to just stealthily place this recorder in the grass didn't exactly work. So anyway, I'm going to get a lav mic and then that'll get sorted out. And that should be next week. So then I won't have to be just holding this thing. I'll be able to do something else with it. But in any case, you'll be able to hear me well, which is good. And yeah. So this week I spent most of my time working on replacing the menu system, the pause menu system in the game, with something that's a little more shippable. So here's what the previous menu system looked like, and here's what the new menu system looks like. So you can see that the new menu system is quite a bit more polished and has a lot more juiciness to it, I guess. The main benefit that the old system had was that it was fully mouse-based, but I had actually hard-coded exactly every position on the screen where the different menu items might be. And now that did account for different resolution scales and stuff, but still pretty much everything was fixed. And if I wanted to add something new, it was quite tricky to add. And certainly it would have been very difficult to add anything that interpolated between the things you had selected, or if I wanted to add keyboard support, that would have been difficult. Now the new menu system only supports keyboard at the moment. I may add mouse support before ship, but I'm okay with it just supporting keyboard since you do play the game with the keyboard and the mouse on PC, so you definitely have keyboard. And on a controller, you would just be using the controller to navigate the menu anyway. So as of today, that menu is pretty much done. I do need to add a load saved game menu so that you can load earlier saves and stuff. But the basics are in there. You can change your resolution, toggle full screen settings, and change your mouse sensitivity and volume settings and things like that. And furthermore, it's relatively easy for me to add new things to the menu because I designed it in a way that was extensible. So one thing that you might wonder is, why would I not use Unity's UI system? Why write my own thing? Why reinvent the wheel, so to speak? Well, answering this is a little bit complicated, but it's kind of a general question that applies to a lot of things. For example, why did I choose to use Unity versus writing my own engine? Why did I write my own animation system for the game rather than using Unity's animation system? So there's basically a line there, I find, of cost effectiveness, below which I would rather implement something myself, and above which I will take the off-the-shelf solution. Here's a very straightforward example. Say I'm using Unity, but then I decide I'm going to go get a package from the asset store that handles line rendering or something. These types of packages exist. You can do smooth, anti-aliased, curves, or whatever. And then I need to ship my game, and about a month before ship, this line rendering package stops working. And I go to the asset store to see what's going on with this, and it turns out the developer hasn't worked on this line rendering package in a year, and maybe they work at EA now, or God knows what they're doing. In any case, they don't have time to fix this line rendering package. So now I'm a month before ship, and I need to implement this whole thing from scratch myself anyway. So that's a dependency that the game has. This thing needs to keep working so that my game can keep working. So at a base level, that thing is Unity, and we can't assume that any piece of software, including Unity, will continue to be maintained forever and work indefinitely. But in addition to that, we can talk about different Unity features and how core they are. So the UI system, for instance, seems like a fairly core system. However, they've already replaced it once. The current Unity UI system is actually not the UI system that they had 5 years ago. So it's fair to expect that in another 5 years, they're going to replace the UI system again. So if I'm dependent on that UI system, if I want to continue updating this game in 5 years, say I want to ship it on the PlayStation 7 or whatever's out by then, and that requires me to update the game or use a new version of Unity, if that UI system is not compatible with that new version of Unity, then suddenly I need to re-implement the UI from scratch. So it actually makes a lot more sense if I'm thinking long-term to implement something that's much more core to what Unity is. So in this case, my UI system is not built on anything except for game objects and text. So as long as there's some way in a new version of Unity to render text, I can maintain this UI system fairly easily. So then you might ask, why choose to use Unity at all? Why not just write a custom engine? So for my last project, I wrote a custom game engine, but I didn't really know what I was doing because it was my first time writing a game engine, and so there were a lot of decisions that I made that really needed to be reevaluated heading into a second project. In fact, the last project mostly failed to ship because the game engine that I wrote for it had so many issues. So I didn't really feel like dealing with the game engine. I felt like Unity was a marketable skill, and so I chose to start working on this game in Unity, and at a certain point, you're making the game in Unity. So writing a custom engine, assuming you can afford to do so and have the know-how to do so well enough to ship your game, is almost always the best option because it gives you the most maintainability in the long run, because you own all that code, and you also presumably will understand how most of it works. So unless you're strapping your game engine together from 27 different modules that are all being maintained by a bunch of other people, more or less, if something breaks with the game, you can go in and fix it in 10 years and keep the game running. So whether you pick something that's an off-the-shelf solution or you implement something yourself is always a decision that you have to make on your own terms. I think most of the time game developers don't really think about the long term with their games, and they're kind of just thinking about finishing the game now, and then people are going to play it now, and then I don't really care about whether it gets forgotten about in 5 years. This is kind of why most video games get forgotten about. But if you want a video game if you want the game that you're making to last into the future, then you have to have as much ownership of the technology stack that's making it possible as you possibly can. One example of where you had to go to extreme levels for maintenance on a game in order to keep it playable is Fez. So Fez was built on this technology called XNA that Microsoft made as a way for people to make games. Unfortunately, Microsoft decided to discontinue XNA after about 5 years. So the entire game had to be re-implemented into a different paradigm. So this may eventually come to fruition with most Unity games, but let's assume that Unity will be around in 10 years. The way that I can most ensure that it remains playable is to use as few bespoke features as possible. So that's mostly what I did this week. I've also been working on the animations a little bit more, but I'm going to wait until next week because then those will be fully done and I can show that off. Like the video if you liked it, dislike if you disliked it, subscribe. Follow me on Twitter at mvandevender, and follow the game on Twitter at Taiji Game. I'll see you around next time, guys. Have a good one. Numi, 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 numi.